Valve has been gatekeeping something from us for almost 20 years. If you make a map with more than 8 control points, TF2 will violently crash and explode. No TF2 map can ever have more than that. Steel only has 5, Dust Bowl has 2 per 3 stages, 6, and Snowplow has 3 per 2 stages, 6 again. But if you just make the number bigger, it works. There's no actual technical limitation that makes this number what it is. So that begs the question, now that we have a legal way to share and play TF2 mods with people, what stupid game modes have we been missing out on if you could have a million control points? After thinking about it for a while, the idea I got was football. A long stretch with points stacked one after the other, and you win by making it to the enemy's end. This is something you'd only be able to do with unlimited control points. Except it isn't. Except you can actually just do this right now. After even more thinking, I realized that even though you can't have more than 8 points in total, you can functionally have an unlimited amount of them, as long as you don't need more than 8 points, all active at the same time. This is because we have the power to change who owns a point, and points can also be moved and teleported around with no restrictions. So what if we have one big capture zone? Whenever it gets capped, move it forward and reset it back to neutral, so players from either team can cap it. Then when the point passes a special coordinate, we crown the winner. How would this not work? Everything here makes sense. So I tried it out, and it actually does work. I released 100 players onto it, and it instantly became a top 3 map on the 24/7 100-player server, only beaten by the Payload Dust Bowl I made and Freaky Fair, which is a ridiculously enthusiastic welcome to it. People constantly want to play it. It's hard to speak for everyone, but the appeal is probably in the back and forth, and the freedom to pick your fight. While other maps are basically made as a big wall with doorways cut out to let you pass, the map I made was essentially the inverse. It's an open field with obstacles in the way. This meant that while the obstacles do try to nudge people into each other, so there's fighting, the map doesn't get stuck in one place for long, and the fight actively moves back and forth along the map. Every defensive position you can take has multiple angles to be attacked from. So Ubers are nice, but they're ultimately optional. It doesn't really matter anymore if your team's free-to-play medics can stay alive for 40 consecutive seconds to get an Uber. And since the cap zone is a big line across the map, you have the freedom to pick which fight you take part in, since they all equally contribute to the objective. If one choke doesn't fit the strengths of your class, or one choke has all the heavies and demos you don't want to deal with, or you can't make much progress, you can always swap to another side and try something else. But the craziest part about this map is that I slapped it together in less than 40 minutes. Granted, I had pre-made buildings that I just plopped in, stole buildings from Valve's maps, and later I overhauled the middle and final zones. But beyond that, everything I did in those 40 minutes have lived on into the final version. So, what if I took it more seriously? For all the ways it's great, the map is pretty flat, both physically and emotionally. Every building is essentially a really fancy pillar that divides the space and blocks sightlines. They don't do much in the way of making combat with other players more interesting. The types of chokes the map creates are all very similar, so even though the map is literally different layer to layer, the experience of playing through the map can feel flat. This building has a garage door on the outside, and on the inside, there's a second story that lets you perch over the doorway. And while neither of these are OP, I also don't think they're healthy. So I booted up Hammer again and started with this, a tunnel. The original map started with nothing in the map center, but it proved to be too barren and strange, so I stole a house from Codefront. This mostly worked, but among its issues, it was too insulated. Engineers would bunker up, and the house provided enough cover for them that it was way too cumbersome taking down their nest. So I simplified it down into its basic parts, and nerfed what made it way too unnecessarily strong. The tunnel is an even further simplification of that. I thought it was fun how the two center walls create a dynamic where trying to spam or push across opens you up to the risk of someone close, which challenges you to either take the risk of ignoring it or budgeting your attention to clear it. And for the other player, the wall gives them an opportunity to safely take some space. But pushing past it to take even more is risky, since you can't really know what's around the corner and you're challenged to make the best decision for the moment. The tunnel is an attempt to roughly recreate that, to see if expanding on that is interesting. Next, the first layer. The idea on the first map was to create geometry biased to the team that would be attacking, so they have momentum to meaningfully get out. It makes no sense to trap teams in the middle. I didn't think there was any reason to go against this, so I refined what the first map tried to do here. The new central house gives you windows to shoot from as it did before, but it's more reasonable. You're not as protected. You still have a quiet spot to build in, but there's more angles for it to get taken down from. The side house now gives you more space to work with, but it isn't just two tiny doors you have to watch. Going into the second layer though, is where I tried stranger ideas to see how things could be more interesting. I made this house with alternating walkways, this weird platform with a crawl space, this long room with a central divider, an open platform with walls, this U-shaped conflict zone, and at the end, a massive pyramid. I tested this, and surprisingly, almost everything worked out. This group of structures played out fine, which isn't surprising since they're not adventurous. What was really surprising to me though, was that the walkway house and the crawl space not just worked, but were very fun. The walkways were cool because they were high risk, but also high reward. You didn't have much space, so getting noticed was dangerous. It was easy to get destroyed in that position, but you can also do a lot of damage. So it was fun balancing that against pushing your luck to advance your team as much as you can. The crawl space was surprisingly fair. The price you pay in slow movement and no ability to dodge incoming damage was a meaningful nerf, and the small window you get in exchange was usable. You can definitely get kills out of it, and make a difference too. Many times, a prolonged fight here in this area was broken through by a crawler, weakening the attackers in this area at the right time. So this proved to be well balanced. You're easy to kill, but you can also get impactful kills. It was also surprisingly funny crawling in and seeing the boys posted up around the fireplace, and everyone slowly shuffling around on their knees. What the big problems on this first version were was middle and the massive pyramid. Middle was too stalematy because the walls made it too easy for teams to stack up, so it was harder than it should for teams to get the momentum to push through. Having recently developed the coolest new stalemate breaking technology, I had to try it: crawl space. And the other problem, the massive pyramid. It was interesting to try to see if it really was as stupid as I thought, but the short of it is sniper and spam. It was way too open for anyone to assault. I ended up replacing this with a really long house. The idea was to create a tense final cap battle with engineers bunkering in the upper hallway and players holding out underneath, which survived the test into the next version. It seemed okay, so I focused on two other issues instead. First, the crawl space under mid was too big, allowing players to tuck deep into the corner and become too hard to kill. Even worse, heavy medic combos would hold hands and crawl in together, which easily outsustained the damage a few enemy counter-crawlers could do. So I added wedges to the corners to limit how deep you can go. The crawl space is still really useful, it's just not stupid anymore. Problem 2. The cap zone's dispenser enables the short circuit to become a stage 5 cancer. Wait, what? On the first day, I tried a few experiments. Of them was making the cap zone heal you if you were in it. This made gameplay so much smoother without constant hunting for health packs because you ate too many strays. And you could really feel the difference when you went back to playing without it. So it was a very easy inclusion. The problem though was that the dispenser I used for this also regenerated your metal and short circuit NGs went ham. It wasn't good, so I replaced it with 8 robot destruction dispensers. This was the only TF2 dispenser you could use that would only give healing, but it was absolutely locked to only healing at 5 health per second, which is this lightning fast. So I had to stack them to make them better. This had the side effect of So eventually, I gave in and we remade the dispenser in VScript. I left test free, thinking the only real problem left was to clean up the sniper sightlines. The wedges in the crawl space on the middle worked, and the cap zone isn't giving out infinite free metal anymore. So what's left is snipers. Since the map is a big straight line with a grid of structures, there's some icky lines here and there. This doesn't sound like a big undertaking, and I agree, I didn't think it was one, but I ended up trashing the entire second half of the map and came out with this. The problem I ran into was that everything was a domino cascade. Adding a wall can ripple into creating a problem for the surrounding space, which means you need to move this back, then move this back, but that creates a new problem, and so on, which is why everything got rethought. But the remake went well in testing. You can still bunker up inside or outside the now shortened hallway room. The gameplay in the Divider house is intact, and Sniper isn't making people sad anymore. The only thing that stuck out was the underside being a little too hard to deal with, since to win, nobody on the enemy team can be on the cap at all. You need to simultaneously control the entire left and the right. So it didn't make sense this was another big investment needed out of the attackers. So I added a wedge here so you can't hide that deep into your hole. But that was it. That's the sequel, finished. A short and simple story. The map, besides the wedge I needed to add, was otherwise fun to play. There weren't any other structures that stuck out as a problem. Overall, I'm happy with how the sequel went, and I think it meaningfully improved on the first map without messing up what made it fun. The first map is called Frank because a livestream chatter called it a Frankenstein map. So for a sequel, a Frank-esque name such as Franklin or Frankfurt would make sense. So I'm naming it Gustav. They're up on the 100-player server, and along with that, I'm also putting up the long-requested duo of race maps, Balloon Race and Wacky Races, and 100-player TF2 where hope your computer doesn't explode.